In the news tonight, His Majesty the King called on the Northern Military Command in Ajloon and urged all the local authorities in the north to assist residents in every possible way following the snowstorm. The United Nations sent its first delivery of humanitarian aid by air to Syria from Iraq and plans 23 rotations over the next 12 days. And South Africa buries Nelson Mandela, closing one momentous chapter in its history and opening another. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King, the Supreme Commander of the Jordan Armed Forces, called on the Northern Military Command in Ajloon and urged all the local authorities in the north to assist residents in every possible way that might be needed following the snowstorm. The King urged the meeting, attended by the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mishal al-Zabin, the Commander of the Northern Region, as well as the Governors and Public Security Directors of Irbid, Jarash and Ajloon, to pay special attention to the severely affected and most distant areas in the region. His Majesty asked that all forms of assistance, including food packages, be distributed to citizens who have been adversely affected by the weather conditions in various parts of Jordan. He said the Jordan Armed Forces and public security must be deployed alongside government and municipal capabilities to assist citizens wherever they are, pointing that the current conditions require that all parties work together in unity and coordination. Performance of the state apparatus during the snowstorm was under scrutiny during today's cabinet session, chaired by Prime Minister Abdullah Ansur. The ministers praised the efforts of government institutions and security apparatus, as well as the humanitarian work of the Jordan Armed Forces in assisting citizens over the past days. The cabinet listened to a briefing by the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, Mohammed Hamid, and from the Chief of the Electricity Regulatory Commission on the frequent interruptions in electricity distribution to the southern region and certain areas of Amman during the storm. The ministers voiced dissatisfaction with the performance of the electricity distribution companies in light of numerous complaints by citizens and failure of the companies to provide quick response teams. The cabinet decided to ask the Electricity Regulatory Commission to take the necessary administrative measures against the relevant companies, including taking the matter to court. Due to prevailing weather conditions and the possibility of frost during the early morning hours tomorrow, work at all public institutions shall begin at 11 a.m. The cabinet decision also included private and public schools as well as universities across Jordan. Prime Minister Abdullah Ansur instructed that work start at 11 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. Over the past 3 days, 1 meter of snow has fallen in some hilly areas and blanketed most parts of the kingdom. The unprecedented blizzard that has struck the country has also left thousands of vehicles and motorists stranded, but there were no reports of major accidents. While authorities said most of the kingdom's main roads are open, they urged all to stay home unless deemed an emergency. The civil defense and public security departments continue to work round the clock to help those who need urgent assistance. And a royal Jordanian said it is delaying tomorrow's morning flights because of frost formation in the kingdom. It said flights would be delayed so as to enable passengers and crews to arrive at the airport safely. The national carrier today diverted 5 of its aircraft bound for the Queen Alia International Airport to the Amman Civil Airport and the King Hussein International Airport in Aqaba due to heavy fog. Prime Minister Abdullah Ansur said the waves of refugees into Jordan has created major pressures and burdens on the social sector, but added that the kingdom was able to maintain civil peace, security and social cohesion. Addressing the 33rd session of the Arab Social Affairs Ministers' Council that kicked off in Amman today, Ansur said Jordan has achieved distinguished accomplishments in the fields of social development and peace. The 2-day meeting brings together Arab Social Affairs Ministers as well as a number of Arab and international organizations, in which they will discuss a host of issues pertaining to Arab social work, ways to activate the Arab strategy to reduce poverty, and follow up on the implementation of the Arab Declaration of the Millennium Development Goals. Israel allowed the entry of 450,000 liters of fuel today, paid for by Qatar into the Gaza Strip. 4 days of torrential rain was so severe it forced more than 5,000 people in northern Gaza to take shelter at UN schools in what the United Nations described as a disaster area. Many homes could only be accessed by rowing boats. The Gaza Health Ministry said some 100 people have been hurt as floodwaters 2 meters deep in some areas damaged poorly built homes in the coastal enclave.
Gaza has become a disaster zone with water as far as the eye can see in certain areas, 2 meters high, stranding tens of thousands of people. UNRWA has been working 24/7, 4,000 workers working round the clock. We've distributed 5,000 litres of fuel so that the pumping stations can work, and we're taking people to UNRWA facilities. But this is disaster relief under blockade, under occupation. It's very, very problematic.
Over to Syria, where at least 36 people, mostly children, were killed today in the northern city of Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said government helicopters dropped improvised barrel bombs on the city. Barrel bombs are explosive-filled cylinders or oil barrels, often rolled out of the back of helicopters with little attempt at striking a particular target, but capable of causing widespread casualties and damage. Video uploaded on the internet showed streets covered in debris and dust after one air raid in the Karmel Bek district. Meanwhile, Italy said it agreed to provide a port for use in the transfer of Syria's chemical weapons arsenal between ships on the way to its destruction at sea. An Italian foreign ministry official said the use of the port was the maximum role Italy was prepared to serve in the operation, and that the chemicals would not touch Italian territory at any point. Danish and Norwegian ships will collect the toxic arsenal from the Syrian port city of Latakia. The chemicals will be destroyed at sea on board a specially adapted U.S. ship because they are too dangerous to import into a country. But until now, it is not clear how the containers of chemicals could be transferred from the Scandinavian ships onto the U.S. vessels. Meanwhile, the United Nations sent its first delivery of humanitarian aid by air to Syria from Iraq as cold grips the region. It said 2 planes are contracted to do 23 rotations over the next 12 days. The first cargo plane carrying food took off from Erbil, heading to Hasakeh in Syria. The UN's World Food Programme said the food supplies should be able to feed more than 6,000 Syrian families for the rest of December. Various UN agencies are involved in the 12-day airlift to deliver food, blankets and medical kits.
The first flight took off from Erbil Airport, the international airport, to Qamishli, a city populated by the Kurdish inhabitants in Syria. And this is the first flight to be conducted in this manner. We hope it will thus continue by tomorrow and day after. The 12 flights that has the permission from the Syrian and Iraqi sides will continue by the end of December. And of course, the number of the tons that are going to be delivered will be around 400 tons by WFP and 300 tons by UNHCR. We hope also by the beginning of January this air shipment and air cargo will continue to Syria.
The upcoming referendum on Egypt's draft constitution has generated mixed reactions among the public, with many seeing it as a crucial test for the country's transitional roadmap. Interim President Adli Mansour said the referendum will be held on January 14th and the 15th. In a speech to the nation, Mansour urged the Muslim Brotherhood and their allies to participate in the vote and help Egypt unite. For the interim government, a high turnout combined with a majority endorsement of the draft constitution would reflect the people's desire for transition. However, public opinion in the country remains divided, ranging from cautious optimism to outright rejection, while many say they have not yet read the documents. Tunisia's current industry minister was named prime minister of a caretaker technocrat cabinet to govern until elections next year. The appointment of Mehdi Jum'a is the first step in an arrangement between Islamist Party Ennahda and a coalition of secular parties that will see Ennahda hand over power in the next few weeks to end a crisis that threatened Tunisia's transition to democracy after its 2011 uprising. Ennahda won the most seats in a National Assembly selected in the first elections after the fall of Zain al-Abidin bin Ali, but the country struggled with a widening gap between Islamists and secular secular leaders. Under a union-brokered agreement, Ennahda accepted that the coalition government would step down once politicians decided on a caretaker cabinet, completed a new constitution, and set a date for elections. And while not everyone agreed on the decision, Ennahda leader Rashid Ghannouchi hailed the move as a day of victory for democracy in Tunisia. South Africa buried Nelson Mandela today, closing one chapter in its tortured history and opening another in which the multiracial democracy he founded will have to discover if it can thrive without its central pillar. South Africa's prominent personalities, world leaders and VIPs paid their respects to Mandela in a funeral service in his ancestral village of Kunu. There were 95 candles on the stage that symbolize Mandela's years.
Nelson Mandela was laid to rest in his ancestral home in Kunu on Sunday. As his coffin was lowered into the grave, 3 military helicopters flew overhead, dangling the South African flag on weighted cables. The scene echoed Mandela's inauguration as South Africa's first black president nearly 2 decades ago.
We have to take your legacy forward.
South African President Jacob Zuma spoke of Mandela's legacy and the country's future.
One thing we can assure you of today, Tata, as you take your final steps, is that South Africa will continue to rise.
Song rang out among the 4,500 dignitaries and mourners in attendance, celebrating Mandela's remarkable life. Emotions ran high throughout the country, many glued to live broadcasts of the service. In Soweto's Orlando Stadium, hundreds gathered to watch.
Even though I'm not at Kunu, but I feel like I'm there. But spiritually, he's with us, and we're celebrating his life.
The state funeral also attracted tourists, who praised the former anti-apartheid leader.
I think Mandela is not only a symbol for South Africa, but also he fights for the freedom for the entire humankind. I think definitely we're very sorry for the loss of such a man.
A huge chapter in South Africa's history was closed Sunday with Mandela's burial, but it won't be forgotten.
After months of delays, the first direct high-speed rail link of up to 320 kilometers per hour connecting Paris with Barcelona was open. The joint project from Spain's rail service Renfe and France's SNCF will see 2 high-speed train services run between the French capital and the Catalan city each day, with a journey time of just under 6.5 hours. There will also be daily services from the French cities of Lyon, Toulouse and Marseille. The project has taken 10 years to complete, with delays in making trains compatible for use on both sides of the border. Prices of tickets range between 59 and 170 euros, and the rail companies expect 1 million passengers to use the service next year. Staying in the mood of cold and snow, we begin with the Ski Cross World Cup in Val Thorens, France. The ski cross consists of 4 skiers who race downhill over a course of challenging jumps and turns. In the women's race, Switzerland's Katrin Müller took the title after beating compatriot Sana Louidi. French woman Ophélie David came in third.
Ophélie David, quant à elle, est 3e position. Les deux Suisses sont en première. Ophélie David, 3e, les deux Suisses. Aux 2 premières places, Catherine Müller devant Sana Louidi.
And in the men's competition, Austrian Andreas Matt took the gold. In second place came Victor Euling Norberg of Sweden, followed by Jean-Frédéric Chappy in third.
Attention, c'est dans un couchoir de poche. Qui va gagner? Victor, qui gagne devant Victor Euling Norberg.
The fastest man on earth, Jamaican Olympic sprinter Usain Bolt, raced against a Buenos Aires bus and won. After beating the bus, Bolt raced a 120-meter sprint against fellow Jamaicans Maria Forsyth, Kimar Roach and Daniel Bailey. Bolt, who won gold medals in 2 consecutive Olympic Games in Beijing in 2008 and London last year, said he has set his sights on winning a 3rd time in Rio in 2016. After 4 days of heavy rain and snowfall, sunny though cold weather is expected over the next few days, with temperatures below freezing point at night and in the early morning hours. Highs for the next 3 days will range between 7 to 8 degrees Celsius in Amman and will drop to -2. Winds will be northeasterly to moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cold conditions at night and fair during the day, while winds will be northerly moderate, picking up at times, and the seas slightly choppy. The Department of Meteorology urges citizens to limit movement, especially during the night and in the early morning hours, due to frost formation in most parts of the kingdom, low visibility due to fog formation, and of slippery roads. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, his reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King called on the Northern Military Command in Ajloun and urged all the local authorities in the north to assist residents in every possible way following the snowstorm. The United Nations sent its first delivery of humanitarian aid by air to Syria from Iraq and plans 23 rotations over the next 12 days. And South Africa buries Nelson Mandela, closing one momentous chapter in its history and opening another. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night, stay warm, and drive carefully.